Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, and today I am going to review Antebellum. Now, I had not intended on reviewing this movie, but after watching it, I feel absolutely compelled to review it, to tell you about it, but this is going to be a little bit different because I have to tell spoilers. There is no way that you can talk about this movie without revealing the spoilers, because if I did, I would feel like I was lying to you when I was telling you about the plot. So I felt like this was one of the biggest cheat movies I have seen maybe ever. I haven't been this upset with the way the movie was filmed since I saw the Book of Henry. So I would say it hasn't been since then. And I do have a review for that movie as well. But I'm going to go over what worked in the film, what didn't work in the film, which is a much longer list, and also what my gripes are about the film, what was an actual lie, and how I feel like these filmmakers used film techniques against the viewer, because we as viewers have been trained a certain way to watch a film, but they use that against us, and they didn't do it in a fun, manipulative way. They did it where the pieces just don't line up at all, which is why it really does feel like a cheap magic trick. So the movie stars Janelle Monae, Kiersey Clemons, Gabourey Sidibe, Jena Malone, Jack Huston, and it is written and directed by Gerard and Christopher Renz, who are, what a shocker, first-time directors and writers. So you could absolutely tell that they thought they had an incredible idea here. And once again, there are spoilers, so I would click out right now if you don't want to figure out what's going on. They clearly just watched The Village and thought, yeah, I'm going to make a movie about this, but this is going to be about social justice. So I would be really upset if I were M. Night Shyamalan. I would also be really upset if I were Jordan Peele, because they marketed the film in a way where it was like, well, if you loved Get Out and you loved Us, this is basically the same type of film, the same genre of film. And it's definitely not at all. I wouldn't even consider this a horror movie because it doesn't really use any of the horror tropes at all. And the character knows exactly what's going on at all times. So I want to start by reading the IMDb summary, which is a complete lie. So it says, successful author Veronica Henley finds herself trapped in a horrifying reality and must uncover the mind-bending mystery before it's too late. So the problem I have with this is the mind-bending mystery part, because there is no mystery in this movie at all. She knows exactly what's going on at every moment of the film, and there is absolutely no mystery to be solved at all. But I am going to start with the good that's in this movie, because I will always believe that every movie has good points for us, the audience. And I'll say that the overall idea and concept for this film, it could have worked so effectively. I was so excited to see this movie because of the trailer. And so you go in with a certain expectation. And from watching the trailer, I thought the main theme, the main idea of the film was that looking at the effects of slavery from generation to generation, and how those effects don't just magically disappear over 150 years later, but that, what happens in the past sticks with families for years and years and years to come. And that idea of using science fiction and horror to either time travel and go back and forth, or to have the use of ghosts or reincarnation or some kind of supernatural element in the film, I thought that would have been incredible. Of course, that kind of story is difficult to pull off because you really need to think about it in your head. Everything needs to connect together, and you don't want it to be just a cheesy ghost story. But I truly believe that in the hands of a competent writer, this idea and this storyline this would have been one of my favorite movies of the year. And that's why I'm so disappointed with this film. I feel like I'm moving my hands a lot, and I'm Italian. So I do that when I get angry or upset about something. So I can even see myself in the camera, how much I am moving my arms. But that should tell you how much I wanted this movie to be good. The other thing that really, and this did blow me away, was the cinematography by Pedro Luque. This movie is beautifully shot. There are so many horrible images, very violent images, but I couldn't help but notice how gorgeous the shot composition was. I couldn't help but notice how well thought out the color palette was in every shot of the film. I will say this, when I started the movie, the first 5 minutes were incredible. And I thought, if this is the film, how is this getting bad reviews at all? It doesn't make sense. And then I watched the rest of the movie and I realized why. But it is that first, 5, 6, 7 minutes. It is this beautiful long take. And yes, they do use a cheat or two to get you through. But it is so well choreographed. It's so upsetting. And this brings me to my next point of what really worked. This score is out of control good. I cannot stop listening to the score from this movie, and it makes me angry that it was in this film, because I think if this were put in an Academy Award nominated movie, this score would win. So this was done by Nate Wonder, and I believe the other guy's name is Roman Gianarthur. This score is powerful. It hits every note that you want it to hit. You feel like your soul is almost getting attacked. It is gorgeous. And that's a compliment from me, that kind of review. So, if you do nothing, please go find the score. It is absolutely worth it. It is so, so beautiful. And I feel pretty certain that they will take this score and they will put it in a movie, 5, 10 years down the line. And people are going to say, where did that score come from? It's so, so beautiful. And then the other thing that I thought did work very well was the costume design. So if you kind of get the idea, it's the aesthetics that worked really, really well. There's one outfit that Janelle Monae wears in the movie where it is a jumpsuit. It is clearly inspired by African design, and it is gorgeous, and she is gorgeous, and the color palette works so well. And I would say that the costumes in the movie actually give us more emotional background and depth to the character than the actual dialogue in the movie. I know that sounds really harsh, but the writing was so bad. The characters were so underdeveloped. I couldn't believe this was allowed to be made in a way where they didn't go back and rewrite the characters and say, well, you have to develop this a little bit more. These characters can't be so incredibly one-dimensional. But I said I would stick to the positives, and there's still one more positive. And then we'll get to the negative. So the last thing is, I thought Janelle Monae was very good in the film. I like her so much. I saw her in Hidden Figures, and she's great in that, but she really, really blew me away. In Moonlight, I think her performance in that is quite underrated. Mahershala Ali is excellent, but she is really the heart of the film. And she's in, I think, only the first part, maybe a little bit of the second section of the film, but she adds such grace and heart to that movie. She is a wonderful actress, and it was so nice to be able to see her in an actual starring role. That's half the reason I saw the movie, is because I wanted to see her as a lead actress, and she was really good in it. It's just that she wasn't given dialogue that had much emotional depth. So with what she was given, she did a great job. There's a lot of sections in the film where she's not speaking because she's not permitted to speak, and she did a great job in conveying emotion through her facial expressions. And so I would say she was definitely the one actor that I was so excited for, and she definitely pulls through, and she's really good in it. I just can't wait for her to get a role that is spectacular and a role that she really deserves. So now I'm going to transition into what doesn't work in the film. And I'm going to start by explaining what happens, what the twist is, and then going into how everything about this is an absolute cheat. So, the way the movie starts out is it almost has three different sections to it. So you start out with the first part where you enter into this slave plantation, and this is, I mean, any slave plantation would be awful and atrocious, but this one is particularly evil. The Confederate soldiers who are running the plantation, they are the cruelest that I've ever seen. I think ever on film, to be honest. I was even saying to my husband, I thought, wow, Michael Fassbender's character in 12 Years a Slave looks kind compared to these people. So, I mean, it was just very, very much over the top violent. The film had constant rape scenes. It had so much violence. So that's also just a warning so that you know that that's coming as well. Although I think if you're watching this, you probably have seen the movie already, and so you know that. But it starts off and you're on the plantation, and there were things that seemed off to me right from the very beginning of the film. But you go through this, you follow Eden, who is Janelle Monae's character. And then it's just horrible, horrible event after horrible event that happens. And then suddenly they do the movie trick where it cuts to the next sequence, which is now modern day. And she wakes up and it was all just an awful dream. And then you find out that this woman's name is actually Veronica, and she has a family, and she is an author, she is a speaker, and she's going away that morning so that she can speak at a conference, and she speaks about social justice and women's rights. And after she speaks at the conference, she meets some girlfriends, they go out for drinks, and then she gets kidnapped. And then you realize the twist is that when she gets kidnapped, she's actually kidnapped by these insane people who still think the Confederacy is alive and well. And they take her to a plantation, and you realize that the whole sequence you saw in the beginning for the first 40 minutes of the film, that this has all been in present day, and that is it. This character, Veronica, has been kidnapped. They renamed her Eden. She's working on a slave plantation. And I understand the effect that the directors were trying to go for. The idea that we live in a world where this can happen, that we live in a world where this kind of inherent racism still exists, and everything that America was founded on, was made on the backs of slaves, and that nothing has changed and nothing has gone away. Now, this message could have made more sense if you went about the story in a slightly different way. So here's what makes me so angry. They have all of these cheats to make you think that it is something supernatural that's going on. And so the first thing that you experience is that the pillow, when she goes to sleep, when she is the slave Eden, and then she wakes up and realizes she had a terrible dream, the pillowcase is the same pillowcase, exactly the same. First of all, would the slave plantation that exists in modern time have the exact same pillowcase that she has? No, it would not. Like, that's not even possible. Then she wakes up and she says, her husband asks, did you have a bad dream? Did you have one of those dreams again? Inferring that she has tons of dreams about maybe a past life, a past self, this character Eden. And no, that wasn't the dream that she had at all. She just had a random bad dream. And really, when we're looking at the movie chronologically, that's just the first scene when she wakes up. That's the first moment we meet this character. Such a cheat. And here's what got me worst of all. There is then one scene when you are on the slave plantation where the person who is running the entire plantation ends up branding Eden, and he brands her on her lower right back. And then the character Veronica wakes up, and the camera gives us a shot of her touching her lower right back as if she is in some sort of pain. And then she lifts up her shirt a bit, and you see that there's no brand there at all. So it's like, once again, the idea and the concept that, a past ancestor went through this and she would be feeling the same experiences, the same pain that they were feeling. Well, she wasn't. I guess she's just getting a little bit older and she has a backache. So it was just moment after moment like this, where they were trying to trick you. There is another sequence where she's coming back from dinner with her friends, and there is this child who was on the plantation from the previous scenes, who is Jena Malone's daughter. So Jena Malone is like the matriarch of this plantation, and she is raising an incredibly racist daughter. And so we see this girl in the hotel that Veronica is staying at, and she looks like a ghost. She enters the elevator with Veronica. This girl clearly has makeup on. They have put on some kind of makeup to make her look even more pale than she already is. And they put a bit of kind of something under her eyes so that they look like she has dark circles. She is wearing an outfit from the 1800s. And so she absolutely is meant to look like a ghost to the audience. And then when she leaves the elevator, she walks backwards, which once again is not something that a child would do unless, the mother was explicitly telling her, this is how you enter the elevator and walk backwards and make sure you look like a ghost. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you see her walking back, and she has a racist toy, and everything about it is supposed to then mimic The Shining, because then we get a shot where she's in the hallway and she looks like one of the twins from The Shining. So they're like referencing these movies to get you to feel a certain way. But in reality, it's just a little girl who's been put in an outfit from the 1800s, who's walking around this hotel, and no one said anything that here's this girl walking around this hotel by herself and wearing this odd outfit. And because if you're going to do this, I live in the world of realism. Like someone is going to go up to this girl and be like, are you okay? So everything about it was just meant to manipulate the audience, and not in a way that was smart or thought out. It just was there to manipulate us. One more thing that they did, and they did this in the trailer, and it just bothers me so much. So there's a sequence in the trailer where you see the slaves on the plantation, and they look up and they see a plane for a second, and the plane disappears, and the plane reappears, and then it disappears again. So once again, it's reinforcing that idea that you're getting kind of stuck in different time periods, and which reality are you actually in. But in the movie, you see that plane. Veronica sees that plane. It doesn't disappear and reappear. It's just there the entire time. And it's only reinforcing to herself that she needs to get back home to her family, because there's a line in a previous scene where she tells her daughter, when you see the plane, that means that mommy's coming back from the conference. And so it's just another way for her to tell herself that she needs to get back to her family. She needs to get back to her daughter. But they're making it seem to the audience like Veronica is confused and doesn't know what's going on, when she very well knows that she has been kidnapped. All of the people who are now forced to be slaves have been kidnapped. And you find out, and you make this realization that we are in the present day, because one of the men accidentally has a cell phone on him. And so you see one of the Confederate soldiers with a cell phone, and then you just go, oh, they're going for the village. That's what they're going for. But the difference with the village, and I did like the village, and I thought there were a lot of people who didn't like it, but I did like it. The main difference is that the people who were living in the village, unless they were the high ups, they had no idea what modern day actually looked like. So it was a mystery, everything that was going on to them. Whereas Veronica, she absolutely knows what's going on. So the only person who's getting fooled in this film is the viewer. And that's the problem that I have with the movie. There are also a ton of little bits along the way to show you that you are in modern times the whole way through. And the thing is, I actually thought from the beginning of the film that this took place in modern times, but I thought this can't be it. This can't be the twist because it's already been done. And it would be so absurd to do it again. But there were so many things. So for example, in the very opening shot, I kind of felt like the woman who was running away, her haircut felt more modern to me. It didn't feel like something I would see necessarily in the 1800s. So that was kind of the first tipping point. Then you get introduced to Kiersey Clemons' character, and I love this actress. I think Louder Than Words is such a good movie, and I trust her as an actress. And her character had a very strong New York accent and spoke in a very modern way, in a very direct way, a very blunt way, with an accent that I would say is even stronger than my New York accent. And I know that I have an accent. And so that was the next thing where I thought, well, she's not a bad actress. She's actually a very good actress. So it doesn't make sense that she would be doing this accent unless they were in modern times. There's also a scene where one of the slaves calls one of the Confederate soldiers a cracker. And I looked it up, and it was a word that was in existence, but I still don't feel like it was used that often. And it definitely took me out of the scene, and it definitely made me feel like I wasn't in the time period that I was supposed to be in. But once again, I just thought, maybe I'll chalk it up to bad writing, because this would be such a silly premise for a movie in the first place. And these clues, they're just combated by the red herring. So I sort of thought everything even out. It made me think there was still a supernatural element that was going on, and that the slave owners were reincarnated, or they were trying to get ancestral souls back to the plantation. Like they wanted to, bring those souls back. And that story would have been so much better. Another problem with the story is the writing. The writing is just so terrible. The dialogue is so flat. It's one note. You have the ability to take on such a complex topic, and you use such simple language. And I looked it up. So these directors, they run campaigns on social justice, and running a campaign is very different than creating a film, because in a campaign you need to use simple language so that everyone can understand your point immediately. You don't have 2 hours to explain to people whatever it is that you're trying to teach them. So you have to use more simplistic language, and that's what you should do in that case. However, when you are writing a film and you have 2 hours to create something that can look at a complex issue in an intelligent way that an adult should be able to look at, learn something, and take away something from the film, and you don't accomplish any of that, I would call that a complete failure. Veronica's character is the only character who has a bit of a backstory, and really, I don't know much about her beyond her profession and the fact that she has a family. With Gabourey Sidibe's character, the only thing I could figure out is that she is her crazy friend who's always trying to find guys and hook up with guys. And there was no dimension to any of these characters. And while there shouldn't have been any dimension to the slave owners, there should have been dimension to all of the other characters. So, for example, I wanted to know more about the people who were kidnapped and taken in as slaves. Kiersey Clemons' character, you get almost nothing about her, and she ends up killing herself very quickly. And I felt like the only reason they have her kill herself is so that you can see that she has this butterfly tattoo on her ankle, which then connects back to the book that Veronica wrote. And they incorporate very loosely this symbol of butterflies, and butterflies indicating some kind of change, and how the country has to change, and how she will be sort of this like change in leadership and this voice for Black people. And I do think it's great that they had this symbol, this image that they used, but there was also a part of me that felt like, did they just watch Us and they saw that, oh, well, there's a rabbit in the movie and the rabbit meant something, so we're going to throw something else in and just kind of have it in the background, but we're not really going to let it mean much of anything. I felt like they put Easter eggs in, but the Easter eggs didn't really have much depth, and they didn't add a lot to the story. There was also this one character who you find out right before he dies that he was a professor. And so it gave the appearance that they were specifically targeting Black people who were successful, who were very intelligent, and trying to bring them back to being at a slave plantation. And I wanted to know who these people were. I wanted to know, why were they taken? What was their backstory? We don't get any of that. And it just took away from the story even more and more. And so this is the first movie that the directors made. And I would say that it absolutely shows. They don't seem to me like they are people that love movies. Because they just use the tricks of movies in such cheap ways. The writing wasn't good, and it was all about manipulating the audience. And so I want to take a second and read to you guys an article I found with the two directors, and it just bothered me because I felt like they weren't understanding. They felt like people didn't like this movie because it was about slavery. And for me personally, that couldn't be further from the truth. It was about the way that they made the film. It was about the way that they structured the film. And I thought that actually took away from the overall message. So this comes from an article from IndieWire, and it says this: Renz believes much of the critical reaction speaks to the film's subject matter rather than the film itself. We knew, based on slavery, that there were going to be plenty of people that would say, why is this movie necessary at this time? It's irresponsible, etc. And that's the headline. That there's no need for another slave film, which we completely understand, he said. However, we're not going to contribute to the erasure of the history of Black people in America and how this country was founded and where they want to get back to. The movie really is a visual representation of what Make America Great Again would look like. And so I understand what they are trying to go for, in the sense that this is what America could look like if we continue to go down the path that we are currently going on. But to say that people didn't like the film because it's a film about slavery, and that people want to erase the past, but that wasn't it at all. It was about the way they created the film. So I want to take a second and go into how they could have changed the film so that they could have had the exact same story, and how they could have changed the marketing. And I'm not saying this would have been a great movie. I'm just saying I think it would have been better. So instead of having the film jump around in time without the audience knowing it and treating it like we are morons, if they actually told the story in chronological order, I think the film would have been much more successful. So if you started with Veronica and you were with her every single step of the way, and you figured out, oh my God, she's been abducted by these insane people who take her to a plantation, and they're able to hide them on the plantation because it also acts as a place for Civil War reenactment. then that's a story where I can be completely invested. I can understand what the purpose of the story is. I can understand that, they are making the case that we could easily go back to this way of life and that there is this kind of inherent racism that exists within America. Okay, you could have then changed the marketing and you could have made it so that it is this woman who has a PhD, who is an intellectual, who has been kidnapped, and then we don't know who the kidnappers are, but it is something that is shocking and crazy. And so if you looked at it more as this sort of mystery thriller where you're going through it with the character, and then I think it really would have been a surprise that there was a working slave plantation in America currently. It wouldn't have felt like you were trying to, pull the rug out from under us. And I think audiences don't want to be treated like they are stupid. And that's what this film really does. And if they did it differently, I think I would be giving a completely different review right now. So with that said, I think I got everything off of my chest. I would love to know what you guys thought. If you saw this film, please let me know. Did you have the same reaction? I've spoken to a couple of people who have seen it, and we all seem to be in the same boat, and we feel completely manipulated. So if you thought that this was a good film, I would love to hear why you think it's a good film and why you think the manipulation actually works. And if anyone else can think of how to make this better. Although I'm just going to say, if they made the movie that the trailer actually looked like, that would have been the best version of the movie. That's the movie I want to see. So if there's someone out there, maybe like 20 or 30 years down the line, that would be a great movie and I would want to watch that. So with that said, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do, because it definitely helps out the channel. And leave a comment below so that I can hear what you guys think about this movie, because I just want to talk to people about this movie because I feel like I've been totally cheated. All right, guys, I hope that you have a wonderful day and I will talk to you soon. Bye.